Hello and welcome to Mythcrafts. My name is Dr. Emma Woods and I'm a mythologist, a folklorist and an author, and I run Mythcrafts with my husband Shivakumar. So today we're talking about salamanders and some of the mythology around them. So despite their visual resemblance to lizards, salamanders, which are also known as newts, are classified as amphibians, sharing tadpole stages and skin respiration with their close cousins, frogs and toads. Now, one of the coolest things about salamanders is their capacity for regeneration. They can regenerate entire limbs as well as damaged internal organs, and they've been the focus of many medical research projects in the modern world. Now, in the ancient world, salamanders were equally as intriguing. They were believed to have powerful magical properties, and they were key ingredients in many folk magic recipes. Even the three witches in Shakespeare's Macbeth used them in their famous concoctions. In the cauldron boil and bake, eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blindworm sting, lizard's leg and owlet's wing. For a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. One reason salamanders were connected with magic was because many salamander species possess poisonous glands underneath the skin, which they use as predatory defense. While the levels of toxicity between the species varies, the most poisonous examples secrete tetrodotoxin, which is a powerful neurotoxin that's also found in pufferfish. The effects of salamander poison were noted in the Alexipharmaca, believed to have been written about the 2nd century BCE, and it showed just how powerful these neurotoxins could be, stating, "But if hurt come from a draught, hard to cure, of the sorcerer's lizard, slippery skinned and utterly reckless, which they call the salamander, and which not even a fierce flame can harm, then on a sudden the base of the tongue is inflamed, and then the victims are overcome with chill, and a fearful trembling burdens and looses their joints. They stagger and crawl upon all fours like an infant, for the faculties of the mind are utterly blunted, and livid wheals spreading thick over the skin blotch the extremities as the poison is diffused." Despite this, salamanders were used in both medical and beauty concoctions, as noticed by the 1st century CE Greek physician Pedanius Dioscorides. Considered to be the founder of modern pharmacognosy, which is the scientific study of naturally occurring drugs and bioactive compounds from plants, animals, and minerals. Dioscorides included a few of the salamander cures in his groundbreaking treatise on medical matters, where he reported that the salamander is kind of lizard, lazy, variously spotted, in vain thought fireproof. It is antiseptic, ulcerating, and heating. They are mixed in antiseptic and leprosy medicines to the same benefit as cantharides and kept in store in a similar way. Moistened with oil, they remove hair. They are disemboweled, the head and the feet taken away, and preserved in honey for the same uses. Salamanders were also connected to folk magic, as they were thought of as one of the 4 elementary creatures in mythology and folklore. Surprisingly, despite their semi-aquatic nature and wet skin, salamanders were connected to the fire element instead of water. Now, this is presumably because salamanders' natural habitats often included fallen logs, and so it is no wonder that they were often tossed into the fires by accident. It is believed that the mucus layer covering salamander's skin gave them enough protection to survive the initial shock and scurry away from the flames, giving support to the legend that they were born from flames and could survive fire. In Aristotle's The History of Animals, he mentions the salamander in relation to animals that can be found in substances that are usually supposed to be incapable of putrefaction, of which fire is one. He states that salamanders are both impervious to fire, but also that they can extinguish them. Now, the salamander is a clear case in point to show us that animals do actually exist that fire cannot destroy. For this creature, so the story goes, not only walks through fire, but puts it out in doing so. Now, if we consider that the salamander is a semi-aquatic animal, and needs an environment with a high degree of moisture content, then again, you can see how observable phenomena may have led to this connection. Any log that contained a salamander must have retained a significant amount of water for this creature to still be residing within it. If you place a wet wood into fire, chances are you will extinguish your fire, and so the legend grew. The fire-resistant reputation of salamanders became a widespread belief and was considered factual due to its observable nature. Christian theologians, such as St. Augustine, were so certain that salamanders were impervious to fire that they used it as an argument to cement the existence of hell. They reasoned that if salamanders could provide living proof of the concept of eternal damnation, if salamander flesh can withstand fire and survive, then likewise humans could suffer in lakes of hellfire without their flesh being destroyed. According to St. Augustine, if therefore the salamander lives in fire, as naturalists have recorded, and if certain famous mountains of Sicily have been continually on fire from the remotest antiquity until now, and yet remain entire, these are sufficiently convincing examples that everything which burns is not consumed. This idea of salamanders representing the fire element was revived again in the early 15th century CE by the philosopher and alchemist Paracelsus. As one of the great thinkers and polymaths of the Renaissance era, Paracelsus focused on the nature of substances in their artificial and natural transformations. He made great advancements in our understanding of chemistry, albeit given that he was an alchemist and a theologian, he never quite abandoned his esoteric and spiritual bent. Now, Paracelsus's model of the four elements was captured in his work, a book on nymphs, sylphs, pygmies and salamanders and other spirits, where he symbolically attached salamanders to fire, gnomes to earth, undines to water and sylphs to air. One of the most fascinating pieces of salamander lore found in ancient times was associated with a curious relic called fire-cleansed cloth. This literally meant that the cloth was thrown in the fire to cleanse it. Miraculously, this occurred without any destruction to the cloth itself, yet it also came out whiter and brighter than before, with any dirt marks erased. While both rare and valuable, the cloth was in circulation throughout Asia and the Greco-Roman world, often in the form of napkins or tablecloths. This material was commonly called salamander cloth or salamander wool, the assumption being that it came from these legendary fireproof creatures. While the idea of fire-cleansed cloth may sound far-fetched, there's a logical explanation. This material was made from asbestos, which can naturally be found in the earth, extracted and then woven into fibre. Although, we must state that this is very much not recommended given the heinous effects of asbestos dust on human lungs. Now, naturally occurring asbestos has a very fibrous nature, very different to most mineral substances. At that time, fibrous substances were always animal or vegetable, so it is no wonder they did not initially class asbestos as a mineral, but assumed it was shed from an animal. Given that the salamander was also the only animal thought to be impervious to fire, it is understandable that the two became connected. Now, on his adventures, Marco Polo discovered the truth when he came across men mining and processing asbestos into cloth. He recorded this encounter in his travel records, noting, "You must know that in the same mountain there is a vein of substance from which salamander is made. For the real truth is that salamander is no beast, as they allege in our part of the world, but is a substance found in the earth. The substance of this vein was then taken and crushed. When so treated, it divides as if it were into fibres of wool, which they set forth to dry. When dry, these fibres were pounded in a great copper mortar, and then washed so as to remove all the earth and leave only the fibres, like fibres of wool. These were then spun and made into napkins. When first made, these napkins are not very white, but by putting them into the fire for a while, they came out as white as snow, and so again, whenever they became dirty, they are bleached by being put in the fire." Now, while Marco Polo may have demystified the connection between fire cleansed cloth and salamanders, and the myth of salamander flesh being impervious to fire has been debunked, I always find it fascinating to unravel how these beliefs came to be. In this instance, it is fascinating to walk through the application of myth applied to observational phenomena as a way of understanding. That said, most modern scientists are still struggling to understand these little creatures' miraculous capacity to regenerate themselves. And I think it is important to remember that we as humans are never at the end of our learning journey. There will always be new mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this little sojourn through salamander mythology. Please make sure to like our video and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you and goodbye.